what's your unique take on the problem that you help solve for your potential customers? All right.
Mm,
So like, what's not just your company's, if you're a sales rep, but what's your unique take on that? And the more personality
mhm.
you could pump into that thing, the more different you're going to seem.
Welcome to the Making Sales Social podcast, featuring the top voices in sales, marketing, and business. Join Bryn Tillman and me, Bob Woods, as we each bring you the best tips and strategies our guests are teaching their clients, so you can leverage them for your own virtual and social selling. Enjoy the show. Will Aitken joins me today in the Social Sales Link studios here on Making Sales Social. Will is a sales trainer, content creator, and agency owner who's worked with hundreds of sales and marketing teams to fix their broken stuff. And who doesn't like a fix-it person hanging around and stuff like that? Will also does content creation, and his love for content creation led him to his current career in marketing keynotes, book writing, and sales training. He's known for his humor. Thank God. We love humorous people here, as well as candor and unmatched ability to make sales engaging. In that vein, Will has taken his expertise from SaaS sales to viral content creation, among many, many other things. So with that, let's get a little funny. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but yeah, I know, wah wah moment with Will Aitken. Welcome to Making Sales Social, Will.
Bob, what an intro. And I won't lie, whenever we say we're going to make something funny, the pressure is on to try and get
Oh,
a giggle or two. You know what I mean? It makes it so much more tough when you say, let's make things funny.
let's
Um,
make things funny. We usually make things funny here on Making Sales Social. So I mean, that's fine. It's always light and breezy. So especially with our first question, maybe not. We'll see. So our first traditional question always is, what does making sales social mean to you?
hmm, good question. I would say, I mean, there's this idea of social selling, right? And that's
Yep.
kind of where my head goes to straight away, which is, in some people's opinion, just selling on social media with DMs and etc. But to me, I
Yeah.
would say it's more like building a brand and socializing yourself through content, networking, commenting, engaging with people, meeting them online. That means that when a problem that you can help solve comes up, you're the first person they think of. So it's having a social conversation with no attachment to sales until it actually requires it to. So I would say just building a name for yourself, putting it out there, socializing it, and that way being one of the first people turn to when they feel like you can help them.
Sounds like you've taken some of our training because that's essentially what we say, and that, of course, because you sound like us, is the perfect answer. So with that, um, so in researching, looked up your LinkedIn profile. The first statement in your headline: "Trust me, I'm a salesperson," which I think is just absolutely brilliant, especially because people have all kinds of thoughts about salespeople and everything else. I'd like to know the motivation behind you having that as and quite frankly, because of what LinkedIn headlines do. I used to call it your LinkedIn stalker because it follows you everywhere on
Hmm.
LinkedIn. And so whenever people see your name and your photograph, they see the first several words in your headline. So everybody out there, whenever they have any kind of visual contact with anything that you do on LinkedIn, is seeing, "Trust me, I'm a salesperson." Why? Why have that in your headline?
Yeah. I wish I could give you a really thoughtful answer, but the reality is I put it there because I thought it was funny, and then I kept it because I kept getting compliments on it. Um, I think it does call out something that's pretty important to a lot of the things I talk about, which is that salespeople, the irony in that headline is that most people don't trust salespeople, right? And I think that's something I tend to address when I'm working with sales teams and in my content and in the way I do things myself, is that if you build trust, then you actually you can flip that idea on its head. That's the preconceived notion.
Right.
But when you do things the right way, you don't have that issue of mistrust, etc. when you're talking to a prospect, or you can reduce that mistrust. So yeah, that's something I did, and I stuck with it, and then I made a hat with it on and sold some of those on a merch store, and they sold pretty well. I think people get the joke. But I think the
Yeah.
joke calls out something that's super important that most people do not trust salespeople.
Yeah, I know. It's like I mean, one of the very first things we do when we talk to people, especially about LinkedIn headlines, and I wasn't planning on going down this road, but it's interesting, is that we tell people to essentially show their value in their headline, and we also tell people to specifically not say that they're salespeople because in their headline because that's repellent, we think,
Yes.
and it sounds like you would agree with that statement.
I tell people the same thing. Worst thing you put in your title is account executive at blank or S sales development rep at blank because most people are repelled by salespeople. But I work with salespeople and most salespeople, that's who I'm trying to connect with. So although I'm certain that some people have probably denied a connection request from me because they've seen, trust me, I'm a salesperson, they're probably not the right people for me anyway because they didn't get the joke. But I feel like you attract what you put out, and
Hmm.
the people who see that and see the humor in that and see the truth in that are actually going to be the best people I could be connected with, the best people to follow me. So in that sense, I don't recommend anyone else do that. It's a unique case for me because I do a lot of work with sales teams, and I've made that my
Right.
kind of anchor of all the content I create.
Yeah, but people, I think, do kind of have to find that kind of general sense of statement about themselves at the same time. Wouldn't you agree with that? And I guess how would somebody possibly go about determining what that statement is? What do you think
Hmm.
about
Yeah. So when I talk to people about this and they go, "What should I make my headline if it's not just my job title?" I tend
that?
to
Hmm.
say, "Well, what's your unique take on the problem that you help solve for your potential customers?" All right.
Mm,
So like, what's not just your company's if you're a sales rep, but what's your unique take on that? And the more personality
hmm.
you could pump into that thing, the more different you're going to seem. Right. So the basic version of this is, let's say I'm selling some kind of presentation software to teachers.
Yeah.
I could say, presentations are putting people to sleep. Let's chat, or making presentations engaging again, or something to that
Yeah.
effect, right? So I'm more talking about the value or the problem, right? But the more unique of a perspective you can share about that problem in your headline, I think the more profound it is, and the more you stand out. But also the less you put up people's resistance because it doesn't just scream salesperson, it screams person with an opinion and a credible one at that, and potentially even a peer if it's something that people can really relate to.
Yeah, because people connect with people, they don't connect with brands. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. So, and also, I think with what everything that Will just said, you don't have to be humorous about it either. So, I
No.
mean, we are talking about humor, and I mean, and both Will and I know Will's funny. I hope I'm funny, but you don't have to have humor involved there. But that being said, though, you do use humor in your content. So what role does it play? And especially for people like me who want to provide value in their content, things like that. And I tend to use humor as well. So how do you balance entertainment with providing actionable value for your audience?
Yeah. So this is something I've been very intentional about when it comes to building my audience because I didn't want to just be a class clown, right? And
Right,
just do humor, right? I mean,
right.
there's definitely case studies of people who have done that and been successful. There's tons of comedians. One in our space that makes me think of is like Ross, Corporate Bro. He
Okay.
doesn't, I don't think I've ever seen a
Yeah.
sales tip come out of Corporate Bro, but his entertainment is amazing. The reality is, I still felt like I had things to say beyond just the humor, but I think humor plays a great part because it's relatable, right? Normally, you're poking
Mhm.
fun at the problem or the situation, and if you can actually help with that, then you're bringing awareness to yourself with the way you help with that as well, right? So
Right.
if I make a joke about how the fact that you know most emails get replies like unsubscribe or go straight to the spam. If I actually have a service that helps with that, it draws attention to the fact that I can relate to people and it helps build
Hmm.
a relationship with those people. And again, if they know that I can help with that issue when that issue is more prominent, or if it is an issue right now, I will again be someone they turn to, even though what got their attention in the first place was me just making fun of it. Um,
Right.
if I still followed up with some kind of credibility and expertise or tip or takeaway, then I bring attention to the problem, but then I also position myself as someone who can help with that. So it kind of creates a funnel. Um, I, I I tried not to do too much humor or too much education because I feel like there's a lot of doing just humor is something that really differentiates yourself because a lot of people do struggle to be funny and relatable.
Yeah.
However, if I do too much um, of that, then I become a cast clown. Like I said, I lose credibility if I do too much of that. But then if I just did education, then there's a lot of people out there giving very similar tips. Sales has been around for a long time, and a lot of the methodologies and things that have been spoken about have been spoken about before, just in different ways, right? Um,
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people saying those things out there, and if I didn't have a humorous take on it, it would be just harder to differentiate myself in the way I talk about those things than just the other 10,000 sales training organizations and folks out there.
Yeah. So who inspired your comedic style? And then how did you kind of channel that into more of business content? I mean, because you could just toss out a question, who inspired your your comedic style? You'd say Steve Martin or something like that. I don't know. He was just the first person who popped in my head. But then it's like, okay, now channel Steve Martin into business.
Yeah, I would say who inspired my comedic style. I'm not sure. It's kind of always been a key element of my personality. Um,
Okay.
my dad is a very funny fellow. He likes
Oh,
to
okay.
take the piss, as we like to say in the UK, a lot. So I've
Mhm.
always followed in his footsteps in that way. I think a lot of the content pieces that I've put out myself are probably quite inspired by things that I've seen other creators talk about and the way they've made funny things for their specific world, right? So
Right.
there's a lot of inspiration just from consuming a lot of humorous content, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly where I've got most of it from. It's just that I consume a lot of content and I was like, there's this space of where people are making these relatable jokes and videos and quips, but there's not really that many people doing it in business. So then I just
Right.
had ideas and thought about making them, and then I actually made them, and then they did well, so I made more, right? But I'd say though I couldn't pinpoint one great inspiration of them. Probably my dad, who
Yeah, sure.
like a clone of myself, but older and more bald.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean to actually say, one person influenced my style is like, okay, so you're like Steve Martin, but you're in sales basically. And I think that people would see if someone was impersonating someone who is Steve Martin, but is also in sales essentially. So I mean, it could be
Yeah,
kind of an amalgamation of people or,
I mean,
a show or something
comedians
like
who
that.
I liked. Yeah, I think like there's a guy called Michael McIntyre who's a British comedian. He's not super well known, I don't think, in the States. Key and Peele,
Yes.
their skit humor is legendary.
Yeah.
Some early SNL stuff, I guess. I'm just trying to think of where I found inspiration. A lot of movies, a lot of YouTube creators as well.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and I suppose a lot of TikTok creators as well, especially when I first got into things. That's where I started with short form video on TikTok, and that's where it really blew up. And moving that across to LinkedIn was probably the big step that made it more of a business opportunity for me doing that type of thing. So there's like probably a creator I can think of. Evan Williams is really good.
Hmm.
He's got a few 100,000 followers. He does like these sketch comedy things, but more mainly about like mainstream movies and things like that. So he's someone who I think has inspired me.
Yeah, so the whole TikTok to LinkedIn thing, I think is really interesting too, because we talked a little bit about your unconventional career path. That's kind of an unconventional path in terms of how we do social selling. I mean, because we always do LinkedIn primary, and then if your audience exists on Instagram, also do it there. If your audience also exists on TikTok, do it there as well. But
Mhm.
the migrating from TikTok to LinkedIn, I think is really interesting. Why don't you go into that a little bit? I mean, were you actually what was TikTok mainly for and I hate to put it in a pedestrian type of way, but I can't think of any other way to put it right now. Was it just was it just for views and just to build your brand, and now you're doing more business over on LinkedIn, or were you actually doing business over on TikTok as well?
Hmm. It's a good question. And I don't think the answer is either of those things because the reason I started
Okay,
creating content in the first place was really just because I enjoyed doing it. Um, so I've
that's
always
valid.
wanted to do YouTube and
Yeah.
things like that. And, I came from a generation where it's like I could have, if you, a lot of people kick themselves like I could have made a YouTube channel back when it was blowing up and being these huge folks who make lots of money on that. Um, but I was in sales and I just moved to a new city. I didn't know anyone, and I started creating videos as a hobby and as a way to almost talk about my learnings in sales, talk about the relatable things that happen in sales. TikTok has definitely driven some business for me. At very minimum, it's driven some brand awareness for me because people come up
Okay.
to me in Toronto and Denver and even in the streets of New York and say, "Hey, you're that sales TikTok guy, right? Could
Oh,
I
neat.
attribute as much business to TikTok as I have from LinkedIn? Certainly not. LinkedIn is obviously
Mhm.
a much richer audience for sales leaders, etc. But it was a vessel for me to start creating content where I didn't
Yeah.
know anyone and didn't feel judgment. And it was an easy place for me to create video content because they've got quite intuitive editing tools built into the app there. So
Right.
that was ultimately what made it TikTok. And then it was easy enough to cross post anything I made on TikTok onto LinkedIn. And
Right.
although you see it a lot these days, a lot of video on LinkedIn in 2021, there wasn't really anyone
Yeah.
doing as much video, especially not short form portrait video, which is
Right.
almost like the thing everyone's trying to do right now. So
Yeah.
it was ultimately a way that separated myself from a lot of the other stuff that was on LinkedIn at the time as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and LinkedIn is definitely prioritizing short form video, short form vertical video specifically in its algorithm. And now even over on mobile, they have the TikTok scrolling experience. Not everyone still has that yet, but they're still rolling that out. But
Yeah,
if you have that and you start a video, you'll notice that you'll be able to scroll to other videos just like on TikTok.
exactly. And I mean, funnily enough, since they've started doing that, I've been doing less videos and my text posts are getting more impressions now, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
I guess
mean,
it's like you
yeah,
don't want
it's
to do what everyone
something.
else is doing sometimes as well.
Right. I would definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that. So, let's get into the other phrase of yours that I like a lot, and that is someone who fixes broken stuff for sales and marketing teams. So, what breaks? What are some of the common mistakes, and what are some of the common mistakes that you see that you're out there, with your wrench or your spanner if you're from UK, and trying to fix basically?
With my spanner, yeah.
Your
I would
spanner, yeah.
say the most common one across all levels of the funnel from marketing, sales, outbound in the cycle is product. Everyone's so focused about their thing and they're trying to sell their thing. But the reality is they don't ever talk about the problem, whether that's in their content on the marketing side, whether that's in their outbound. They don't address, hey, this is the issue that you might be having that we could help solve. That comes first. So generally, that is the most common, and I still don't know how it comes up so often because people talk about this a lot, and they've been talking about it for a long, long time. Spin, Sandler, gap selling. Everyone says focus on the problem, but yet you think that people are doing this, and then I get into a sales team and everyone's emails look the same, cliches, buzzwords, innovative solution that can help you 10x your whatever it may be, whoever they're selling to. And it still continues to be a problem. So I would say pitching is the biggest problem I often tend to fix. People just trying to sell instead of trying to understand or highlight a problem that they can help with before trying to sell their software, service,
Yeah, yeah.
product.
I mean, we see that all the time as well, just in the people who we coach and who we train. And we are so anti-pitch. We call it, connect and pitch on LinkedIn, or pitch slapping, which is you actually write a pitch in your connection request. And it's just I think. And this is just from my observation, and tell me if you agree or not. I think that even though people I think deep down inside know that they should be addressing problems, but I think that lizard side of the brain comes up a little bit, and it's like, No, you just got to pitch. You've got to close this person down as soon as possible. Pushes away what people should be doing because almost that fear mechanism clicks in and they just want to close no matter what. And how do you do that? You just pitch.
I think it's almost counterintuitive to people for what they think sales should be and
Yes.
what effective sales actually is. It
Yes.
feels, and especially for folks who are new to the role or have had leaders who haven't shown them the light in this regard,
Hmm.
it feels counterintuitive to not talk about your product because you feel like that's your job. Sales, you're selling a product. But the
Right.
reality is, if there is no problem, there is no need for your product. So why would you start before you know there is a need, right? Um,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the big challenge there. It goes against intuition, and goes against people's preconceived ideas of what sales should be, and they don't get shown otherwise. And I did this for a long time as well. Like that's part of why this makes me so passionate, because for years I had mediocre sales results, some big ones, some small ones, and I basically just numbered my way through it. If I put my thing in front of
Hmm.
enough people would say yes, that I would just about keep my job. But the reality is, until when I actually started going some training, it actually became very predictable and a much more rewarding career, because then I was talking about these things that people were currently doing and what was going wrong with them were completely absent of the conversation about my product. And then I was actually finding I was actually helping people with whatever I proposed or solution I put forward versus shilling just anything, right?
Right.
So it became a lot more rewarding when I had that realization, that light bulb moment as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, imagine when you're talking to someone, talk about what they want to talk about, not what you want to talk about.
What are they doing? People love talking about themselves, right?
Yeah.
I also
Yep.
find this applies beyond sales as well. It's like content, right? If
Yep.
you're talking about the problem in your content, you're building awareness of the problem. But on my page, you won't see me pitch myself very often, right? That
Right.
doesn't mean I don't get a lot of people coming to me to work with me,
Hmm.
because I'm bringing awareness to the problem, and
Yeah.
I'm also telling people how to fix their problems for free,
Yeah.
without
Oh,
me,
yeah.
right? So then and then ultimately, if that doesn't work, then they come directly to me because I've already provided some level of value.
Hmm.
So yeah, uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that gets into one of my sayings, which someone else said this once upon a time. I still have no idea who did. If anyone, please tell me if you know who said this originally, because I want to give this person credit because it's brilliant. Stop talking about how you help people and just help people.
love that. I don't know who
Yeah.
said it.
I was depending on you, Will, really.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. I was kind of getting ready for a challenge there, so I could be like, yeah, that was so and
Yeah.
so, but I don't
Yeah,
have it. I'm sorry.
exactly. Exactly. Do you have a quick example of a particularly challenging broken sales strategy that you help transform for an individual or a company?
Yeah, I'll think of one that I had last week, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I was doing a workshop with a team. Our two GWI, they provide insights, right? And they compete with other insights providers like Ipsos, Kantar, these kind of big
Hmm.
historic ones, but they're kind of newer and they focus on online insights, right? And they're easier to use, they deliver faster insights. And a lot of the outbounding to companies was talking about these things. We are easy to use, we're quick, we provide way deeper and richer, more accurate, more niche online insights, right? And I said to them, like, none of these things matter unless someone is worse off for not having those insights, right? So instead of talking about these things, let's talk about the absence of what easy to get, rich, deep online insights are, right?
Hmm.
What does that mean? They've got generic insights, or they're having to work their ass off to find insights that allow them to make decisions as a business. Like,
Right.
focus on that absence of your product and what could be wrong with that, or could be wrong with the fact that they're using something else, versus focusing on what makes you different. Because if you focus on that and someone says, yes, I feel like my insights are generic, or yes, I feel like I'm not in a position where we can feel confident in the decisions our business is making because we're using consumer insights that don't take into account online consumer behavior, and we're getting all our insights from focus groups that take weeks to set up and then don't even give a good true reading of our demographic that we're trying to go after. Until
Right.
you get someone to say that, that's the reason why they would actually care about the thing that you offer. So focus on that first, And if you illuminate that as an issue, then someone saying that I have that issue opens the door for you to say, we might be able to help with that. Let's chat. All right. So
Yeah.
that was an example of one where there was a few people going nodding along, going, "Oh wow, okay, yeah, I get this." Right. No one cares about easy to use deep insights unless they're having a hard time getting insights today.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's yeah. I think you put kind of a twist on something, but I think that a lot of people can relate to it. Imagine the lack of your product being involved. I
Yes.
think that's yeah. I mean,
That's
you
your
know,
pitch. What is wrong
yeah.
with not having your product? That we should be spending a lot of time talking about that. But not in a like you're stupid for not buying our thing way. It's more like
Yeah. Exactly.
what's the problem? Like what's the challenge? And let's make that the focus of our message. Because if people feel that, then that naturally leads to a conversation about how you might be able to help.
Yeah. Dropping major thought bombs during this. I love it. That was great. So let's talk real quick about AI. So AI's here. AI ain't going away. AI
Yep.
is going to, change so much. So with the rise of AI, and I've got automation in this question too. We don't like automation at Social Sales Link. If you've listened to us in the past, you've heard us rail against automation, especially on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn doesn't like it and they will shut you down. So anyhow, with the rise of AI tools, how do you see the role of sales professionals evolving in the next 5 years, or maybe even going away? I mean, because one of the big conversations right now is SDRs and AI, and
Yeah.
that's just that's kind of a tough position to be in right now.
Let's I'll preface this by the way. I
Mhm.
dislike and hate automation and AI and everything it stands for because it goes
Mhm.
against what I believe true good selling is. Now the
Okay.
challenge is
Sure.
that a lot of the AI and automation is only getting better and better. And right now, I would say AI is probably edging out 75% of sellers, outbound
Hmm.
sellers. And that is if AI can do it better, then that just shows how bad of a problem there is there has been in the sales industry. So it's almost brought on by ourselves. Because if AI, the AI messages I can see that it can put together, the emails, even some of the calls are, if they beat three quarters of the sales reps out there, then what does that say about how we've enabled and trained those sales reps over the past few years? Pretty badly, honestly. If something generic that feeds off everything on the internet can do that like that. So I think the things that people can do is think about the things AI can't do as well and double down on all those areas, right? So AI sucks at having personality. I think AI can't have conversations like the ones that you and I are having right now with all the
Hmm.
imperfections and all the opinions
Yeah.
and life experience. That's what makes you you. So I'd lean into more of that while you're selling in both outbound. So if you are funny, lean into funny. Like there's things you can do there to still have a personal influence on what you put out there. There's also things that you can do like referrals, content creation, building a brand, making yourself known, and ultimately doing the unexpected that I think that AI will still struggle to do. So although it beats out the three quarters, there's still a core of people who are doing things different enough and good enough and focusing on the right areas where it's not doing so well. Maybe it will catch up with them. Probably, frankly, the rate this thing's going, it could. But I still feel like there's someone who have to direct these tools, someone who has to know enough about what it should be doing to guarantee that the people who are really good at this will still always have a role to play in the sales motion. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big question mark for me. It's something that I'm really curious, interested in. But I'm not saying I like it, but I can also see that there is a big problem that I think that's
Yeah, so that's
created
a
this
real
day.
interesting, yeah, that's a real interesting insight in that one of the reasons why AI is being so successful, which I don't know if you're going to hear a lot of people actually admit this, is because the sales process kind of sucks.
Let's look at the root of the issue, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem.
Yeah. So, dare I ask my next question? What's the solution?
Still figuring that out myself, but I
Yeah,
feel like the things you
exactly.
can do is build brand, be yourself. Don't be like, let's look at AI. It's some of its parts,
Hmm.
right? It's repetitive learning from the massive sample set that's out there, right? So don't be generic. Don't be anything that AI can do. Don't do those things, right?
Right.
Be imperfect, be yourself, be human, be funny, be thoughtful, be focused on problems, like we mentioned earlier. Uh,
Hmm.
get in front of the camera on video in your prospecting, even, because even
Right.
though there's these AI avatars, they're still kind of wacky and off looking, and they're
Yeah.
probably going to get better. But even that,
Yeah.
like, sure, AI might be able to replace a video of me sat here doing this, but can it replace a video of me stepping around and walking around and getting excited and showing so much emotion? It can't. It just moves the mouth, and just
Right.
does it from weird generic
Yeah.
AI script. So there's things that I feel like we should all be doing, and we should be leaning into those things more.
All right. So cool. So with all of that, I think we're gonna start the wrap up process. So I really enjoy ending each episode with a great takeaway for those who are listening. So Will Aitken, what is one thing our audience members can do right now to, and let's just go broadly here, to improve their sales?
Well, let's start with something that AI isn't very good at right now: referrals, human
Yeah.
connections, building a network. So I would say every seller out there should be, whether you're outbound or you're managing a sales process or you're doing both, should be asking for referrals, because pipeline comes from referrals, and some of the warmest pipeline can come from a referral. So anyone you're talking to, look for the opportunities where you should ask for referrals. I think a lot of people don't, and it's similar to why a lot of people don't ask for the sale. They're afraid of hearing no. Just ask. Anytime you hear someone say, "Yeah, I would like to move forward with you," or "Hey, we're going to put this project on hold," or even if you cold call them, they say, "No, we've already got something in place, or we don't feel like it's an issue for us," or they say, "Yeah, I'd love to take a meeting." Then
Hmm.
that's where you can ask the question. Awesome, great, excited to begin working with you, or I'm looking forward to the meeting next week, or "Oh, that's a shame this got put on hold," or "That's all right, not everyone's a fit for us." Then you can
Hmm.
say something like, "But do you mind if I ask you a quick favor? You wouldn't happen to know anyone who's a bit like yourself who might be able to benefit from a conversation with me about X problem?" And they'll typically think of someone. In some cases, they might be willing to introduce you, but sometimes all you need is a name, because one of the most relevant messages you could ever send to a complete stranger is, "Hey, I just had a chat with Bob, and he said
Yep.
you might be facing this issue, or you might be interested in this. Here's a little bit about what we help with. Does this sound relevant to you?" Sometimes all you need is a name, and that's one of the best outbound messages you could ever send to anyone. Account executives have a ton of opportunities to generate more referrals that way. So ask
Yeah,
for a
especially
referral anytime someone says yes or no.
excellent, excellent stuff. So before we turn out the lights in the virtual studio here, which I'm not sure exactly how that would even work, but before we go, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, a few ways. LinkedIn, I'm obviously quite active there. Will Aitken.
Yep.
I've also got a website, willaitken.com. Uh,
Yep.
I beat all the other Will Aitkens to that one. And I've also got a YouTube channel called Sales Feed. So there's some good long form and short form content over there that you can use to sharpen up your sales skills.
And this is where I get to sound like a radio DJ just a little bit here, because I say also check out Will's merch store on his website at willaitken.com. Seriously, he's got three things up there right now. I don't see the hat on here.
Yeah, I had to take it down because there was some logistical issues, but I'm putting it back up.
Oh,
I'm redoing
okay.
my website right now because I just don't like the way it looks.
Yeah,
Um,
okay. Yeah, yeah.
you
Yeah, I get it.
can you can you
I
can
mean,
you can
I
probably
think it
see
looks
what I mean by looking at it. Maybe by the time this comes out, it might have changed.
That's true. That's a good point. So, I mean, there's a t-shirt I love that says, "I hope this email finds you well." And it's got like the wet paint going down effect showing that that message obviously sucks.
That's a great
Uh,
conversation style, by the way. Wear that in an airport,
yeah,
and
I
you'll
can
have people walk
imagine.
up to you and be like, "Oh, that's so funny." I've had air hostesses, had other people who are in business say, "Oh, I hope this finds you well." That's hilarious.
And there's also a mouse pad and a commission juice mug as well. So yeah, I mean, you can put a wide variety of things in there that could probably be considered commission juice, some of which I probably don't want to hear about. So yeah, so something we always talk about, we have our own phrases and things like that around here. They're not funny is the only problem. But may do our own merch store at some point. That's interesting. May have to think about that. So in the meantime, professional fixer of things that are broken, Will Aitken, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you ever so much for having me, Bob. Great conversation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, same here, same here. And thank you for streaming this episode of Making Sales Social. So remember, when you're out and about this week or any week, be sure to smile for the camera or doing whatever it is that you're doing. Have a laugh or two when you're sharing and talking with people, and make your sales social. Don't miss an episode. Visit socialsaleslink.com/podcast. Leave a review down below. Tell us what you think, what you learned, and what you want to hear from us next. Register for free resources at linkedinlibrary.com. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. Visit our website, socialsaleslink.com, for more information.